unequivocally say we prefer the deer fence.
But we're not telling you to take your deer fence down. We're saying you can have your deer fence until you sell your property.
You can do what?
You can have the deer fence until you sell your property. Now, is that a taking?
It is a taking.
Okay.
Rich, I disagree with one piece of your argument, and that is on the issue of what you term herding of deer. If we talk about carrying capacity, whether we talk about the biologic carrying capacity of a woodland or of any area, the graze that's very available, or we talk about the carrying capacity with regard to what people can tolerate. And those are basically two very different numbers. Whichever carrying capacity you talk about, if you have 20 deer and you have 20 acres, you have an acre per deer. If you fence 10 of those acres and you have 20 deer, you're going to have 20 deer on the remaining 10 acres, and you're going to have twice the browse on those acres. The reason this whole discussion came up, and start by saying that deer fencing has always been illegal in this nation. Yeah, people were told that it could slide through, and there are indeed some people who were permitted to have them. But according to our ordinance, whoever, according to our ordinance, deer fencing has always been illegal. It has always been, anything over 6 feet was always illegal. The reason that the change in the ordinance came about was that people had contacted the village to complain that as their neighbors had put up deer fencing, there were more deer on their property. And that the neighbors were in the same way that if you fill a wetland, the wetland will migrate to the neighbor's property. Or if you increase the runoff on your property, you're putting water on the next property. That was the basic. It was not an aesthetic thing. Yes, aesthetics were brought up, but they were primarily discussed, if I remember correctly, by the planners and not by the audience. The people who came into the audience were complaining about other things, and the thing that they were most complaining about was herding. It isn't fair to us that you're allowing our neighbors to take their property out of the food chain and putting it all on us. What this ordinance attempts to do, it attempts to allow anyone who has a deer fence, anyone who is dedicated to preservation of their woodland, to continue to do so. It also allows people who don't have fences to put up an 8-foot fence, leaving some, and you call it channeling space, I consider it browse space, between properties for the deer. So it's as close to a compromise as we could get comfortably. And no, I don't consider it taking. I consider it as balanced a compromise with everybody trying to not step on anybody's toes too hard. And good governance is making everybody a little bit happy and a little bit unhappy.
Well, Sheriff?
Well, I submitted something in writing to the board, but I guess for the benefit of everyone else, I'll tell you what I said. From my perspective, before we can really consider the ordinance, there are some questions that we really haven't asked ourselves. With respect to when you say fencing, normally, people put up a fence for maybe privacy or security or protection or something of that sort, but people put up deer fences for an entirely different reason. They're trying to protect their property from deer browse. And so I think that, there's two different considerations here. So if we're going to talk about deer fencing in particular, I think we need to directly address the reason. If we are really having an increase in the number of deer fences, then the question that comes to my mind is, so why is that? Are we really having a problem with deer browse? And are the deer a significant threat to the health of our woodlands? And if you look at our comprehensive plan talks about protecting wildlife and protecting our woodlands. And so we're talking about two competing aspects of our comprehensive plan that I think we need to talk about openly. If we are going to value the health of our woodlands, how do we reconcile that with valuing wildlife? I think that there's some information that we need to have. Deer count, I think, is one piece of information. I don't even know if we have been keeping data or if we have data on the number of fences, particularly deer fences that we used to have, what we have now. Have a lot gone up recently? I don't know that. And I'm really interested in hearing from the DNR expert because at one point, the Plan Commission did, but the Plan Commission didn't consider this exact question. The Plan Commission really was asked a different question. And one of the concerns I have is that we had several different people quoting what Marty Jones had said, but Marty Jones wasn't here to say for himself. And I think if we're going to look at a different question, then he needs to be here to hear that question, the new question. I also think we need to look at, if we decide as a village, okay, the deer are a significant threat to our woodland, then we have to decide as a village then, okay, so what are our options for deer control? And I think we have to look at all of our different options. I also think one of the things we might want to consider is, from what I understand, most of the problem that we have with deer browse is located in South Riverwoods. Perhaps we want to treat South Riverwoods differently. I don't know. That's one thing to consider. If we do decide, okay, yes, we need to have some kind of deer control, and maybe the best kind of control is fences, then I think there are ways we can look at it. One of the things that I think I would like to do, if that's the conclusion we arrive at, is if really this is a South Riverwoods problem, I'd love to have a task force of residents get together and see if the residents themselves can perhaps come up with a compromise. Because I think that ideally what we want is for this to be a workable solution for everybody. And so what I'd like to do is talk to the people who are most concerned about it. There are other options we could look at, maybe fencing larger areas, fencing several properties together. Maybe allow fencing but require a specified buffer, not the front side, rear yards as we have it, but maybe the concern is how far away it is from the street. So it really is the aesthetic part of things to look at. But I think there are a lot of different things that we haven't looked at that maybe the residents themselves could come up with as ideas for compromise.
Mrs. Swiley.
I have a problem with the fact that nobody has zeroed in on unanimity on what the problem consists of. We were all over the board, and we were at the Plan Commission. We haven't zeroed in on the problem. We, as a board, are trying to come up with something that will make everybody happy. And about the first or second time we start talking about it, we go this way, and nobody's in agreement as to what the problem is. I personally feel that, I asked the question last time, and I expressed surprise that people were surprised when they found deer in Riverwoods. To me, it's tantamount to moving next to a railroad track and then complaining about the train noise. Or moving in the shadow of O'Hare and complaining about airplane noise.